Sometimes things happen to us that we really just cannot explain. From potential premonitions of what's to come, to seeing things that no one else can. On today's list, I'll be telling you a few stories that will make all of us question reality. Starting up this list in our number 10 spot. This story comes from a Reddit user called Nugget Buttsucker, as they recount a time when they were taking care of their cousin who has disabilities and needs some extra help. They said that the cousin just needed a bit of help getting around, help getting into the bathtub or cooking food, just stuff like that. So this is their story of one particular day. One morning I heard the water running in the bathroom when I went to check in on her. I had to pass her room on the way to the bathroom. When I did, I saw that she was in her rocking chair in the corner, her blanket over her head, and she was rocking back and forth. I said, "Don't leave the water on, you're going to flood the place." I went into the bathroom to shut the faucet off, and my cousin was there washing her face. I immediately ran back to the room, but it was just her blanket crumpled up in the rocking chair. My cousin wanted to know why I undid her bed. I didn't stay long after that. This definitely would have been such a strange occurrence that undoubtedly would stick with you for a long time after that. Moving on to number 9. This story comes from a Reddit user called Leather Professional 1, who I'm going to call Kelsey. Basically, when Kelsey was 7 years old, 2 officers in suits, a man and a woman, came to her door. She lived with just her mom, and the officers separated them for questioning. The male officer told Kelsey's mom that her dad had been killed and that the officers were able to track them down because the mom was receiving help from the state, as well as the fact that the pair had moved from Utah to Arizona and all of the family names matched. In the other room with the female officer, Kelsey is told that her father is gone as well and was asked when the last time she saw him was, which had been a while. Kelsey's mom ends up calling the father's family to discuss this insane news she had just heard, but to her surprise, the dad is actually there and gives the mom attitude by saying, "Well, I'm obviously not dead, am I?" This was obviously great news, and the officers must have made a huge, really troublesome mistake, but this is where the story gets crazy. Through the years, Kelsey and her mom tried searching for the story of the man that the officers thought was Kelsey's dad, but they were never able to find anything even close. 12 years later, when Kelsey is 19, her father actually does get killed in a very similar way to what the officers had explained all those years ago. Was this just a really strange and terrible coincidence, or is something unexplainable going on here? Moving on to number 8. This story comes from the Reddit user Ellen_Row, and this is what they had to say. My grandma and aunt were changing a light bulb together in my aunt's home. My aunt had dropped the light bulb she was about to put in and climbed down the ladder, avoiding the tiny shards of glass. My grandma, who was holding the ladder, confirmed she saw it drop and smash all over the floor. They both left the room to find a new light bulb and get a dustpan and brush. Coming back, they found the same smashed light bulb was gone completely, and on the ladder was a completely new light bulb that did not have a single crack in it. To this day, my grandma still doesn't like to talk about it, whereas my aunt believes it was ghosts due to their house being next to a graveyard. What do you guys think happened here? It's always so interesting when 2 separate people share a strange memory together. Moving on to number 7. This interesting story comes from the Reddit user low_technology9006. First, they explained that at 9 years old they had a surgery done on their legs that left them in a wheelchair for around 3 months. Flash forward over 20 years and they are doing some traveling in a big city and had just exited a coffee shop. They were waiting for a friend, so they leaned up against the side of a building as they sipped their coffee. That's when they begin to get a very strong visual memory of their time in a wheelchair, specifically a photo image that their mom had taken of them during that time. Some strong emotions came up as they were thinking about this image and the time surrounding it, but they were more of observations rather than emotions that they were really holding on to. Suddenly they totally snapped out of this deep train of thought and a stranger appeared. The stranger said, "Are you looking at that guy in the wheelchair? Incredible, isn't it? We're so adaptable." The stranger then mumbled some gibberish as he went off on his way. Low technology quickly looked at the streets around them, even around the corner and down an alleyway, but there was no one in a wheelchair anywhere around them. It is possible that they just missed the person that the stranger was talking about, but what if this wasn't the case? Who was this strange man anyway? Moving on to number 6. This story comes from the Reddit user Almost Unbelievable, which this story really is. I'm going to call them AU for the sake of the story. This story takes place in 1989 or 1990 when AU was a young teenager. Every Sunday the family had a big dinner as it was their tradition, but this Sunday they didn't have any potatoes, so their mom said she would run to the store quickly to grab some for the evening. The store is about a 10-minute walk away, and the mom left at 11 a.m., so they expected her back by around 11:30. When their mom didn't return by noon, they started to get worried and went outside to kind of look around. While they were outside, they saw the bus coming and thought that maybe their mom had jumped on there. As it approached, AU saw a figure dressed in all black on the bus waving super frantically. Once the bus driver stopped, the figure had just completely vanished. Eventually around 9 p.m. the mom ended up returning home, but she was super confused as to why the rest of her family was so concerned, as she swore she wasn't gone for very long. To make this weird story even weirder, AU explains how their mom was basically a completely different person after this day, and that she suddenly began asking AU to make a YouTube channel dedicated to parallel universes. I'm not sure what happened to AU's mom during this day, but something is definitely weird. Moving on to our number 5 spot. This story comes from a Reddit user whose name I cannot say, but we will call them Taylor. Taylor says that they can remember conversations that others say have never taken place, and this is one of those stories. The first one I remember was in 2009, and it was between me and a sibling. We walked from the bus stop to our house, and it was when we watched Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot, so we talked about going home and playing a few rounds of it. So, once we reached our driveway, he said he had to go to the bathroom first. He ran in before I did since my friend stopped to tell me that she'd be over after dinner to pick me up to go to the park. Once I got in my house, I saw my brother playing on the PS2. I was confused and asked him why he was playing the game since we talked about playing the card game. He said he had no recollection of the conversation and that he didn't even go to school that day as he had the flu. I was extremely confused since he got off the bus with me not even 5 minutes before. I asked my stepmom and even she said he was home all day. To this day, he still says that that conversation never took place. Have any of you guys ever had a similar experience to this? Because that would be so confusing. I feel like that's a pretty wild story. Moving on to our number 4 spot. This story is from the user Toast at Midnight and isn't super crazy, but would definitely be extremely off-putting. They said, "My sister and I talk about this one quite a bit. My other sister has a Kia Soul, and when she bought it, it was a light green color. It's silver now though, and she swears she's never owned a green car. That's because she hadn't until this one. Both my sister and my cousin vividly remember it being green. When she comes by, I still instinctively look for the green Soul. I'm not sure how the 3 of us independently came up with this, but no one else in our family remembers it being anything other than silver." And then she adds a little edit note at the end. "We saw the green car for months, not just once. I also borrowed it from her. It was always green until one day it just wasn't." Do you guys think that maybe her sister is just trying to pull a prank on all of them? Or maybe they all really somehow jumped realities together? I don't even know what is going on in my own reality anymore after all of these stories, I'm not gonna lie. Moving on to number 3. This Reddit story comes from another user whose name I cannot say on here, but I'll just say that it is similar to the name Deep Dish Pizza. Their story goes, "Last night, my boyfriend and I were laying in bed around 10:30 p.m. watching TV when we heard our gate open and assumed it was our roommate getting home from work because it was close to the usual time. I heard what sounded to me like singing, so I asked my boyfriend what he thought, and he said the same thing. So I got out of bed to see if he was outside. I waited a couple seconds, I didn't see anything, and then I see him pulling into the garage. He comes out a moment later singing exactly what we just heard. It seems like they had a full experience before it even happened, which is super creepy. This would be so unsettling and also so weird to try and explain to someone." Moving on to number 2. This story comes from the Reddit user Epoxy Mate Time of Death, and is from a time when they were in college. They explained that they were in their car with their dad and sister on the way to the library. The dad Dad was the driver, the sister in the passenger seat with epoxy in the back seat on the driver's side. Then they go on to say, my sis and dad were talking and I was looking out the front window absent-mindedly. I saw this old man up ahead wanting to cross the street. We were driving fairly slow since it was a residential neighborhood. Dad's always been a courteous driver, so even if there wasn't a stop sign, I expected him to stop and let the old man go. The old man looked at us expectantly and then stepped off the curb and started walking into the road. Dad wasn't slowing down, so in a moment of panic but a few seconds too late, I shouted, "Watch out!" just as we should have hit him straight on. There was no bump, no thump, no scream, nothing. I snapped my head back and there was no one on the street or sidewalk. Dad pulled over and he and my sister looked at me weird. I explained about the guy, but they both insisted that there hadn't been anyone there at all. Playing it back in my head, he just kind of disappeared as soon as the car would have hit him. Where did the man go and why did no one else see him? Those are my questions, not the story person's questions. How? And in our number one spot today, this story is from the user I hate myself a lot LOL, which is kind of a sad name, so we're gonna call them Fred. Fred starts off explaining that they were on a longer drive that was about 7 or 8 hours. The drive is through the desert, and since it's a 2-lane rural road, headlights have to be on all the time. On the drive, Fred comes up behind a semi-truck that is going way under the speed limit, so he gets ready to pass, but that obviously means that they have to go in the lane of oncoming traffic for a few seconds. As they go into the other lane to pass, out of the blue they see a red car that looks like it's from the 80s about 10 feet in front of them with no headlights on, and Fred realizes that he can't see a driver in the front seat. Fred had waited to make sure it was clear for him to pass and only saw one other white car that was way behind the red car, so where did this red car come from? Fred had to quickly swerve left to avoid a potentially fatal collision and ended up going airborne before crashing so badly that he shattered a vertebrae in his spine and also had a collapsed lung. An older woman came to Fred and asked if he needed help, to which Fred said yes, but then she just said no and left? Then the white car that Fred had seen before got to the accident site and the man driving came out to help Fred and wait with him while emergency services arrived. They both saw the old woman, but neither of them saw a car for her. When Fred was on the phone with 911 explaining what happened, the man from the white car said he never saw a red car and just thought that Fred had lost control of the vehicle. I have so many questions. Who was that old lady? Where did that red car come from? And where did they both go? All in all, I am just glad that Fred was okay. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time! This Reddit story comes from another user whose name I cannot say on here, but I'll... Drill guy. Honestly, I know, because this script is too long already. And I know that, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But you gotta get all the info in the stories. Oh yeah, and then Che was here going, okay, that's it, you're done. That was your time, now it's my time. My sis and dad were talking, and I was They better be building something good over there. Something for all of us. Maybe some soundproof material. Ring! You like that? Yeah, it's nice for my video.